Now, our last one, we are going to go into gender diversity, equality, and how to push it. Now, Radu, this was one of the topics that you had kind of posed as well. I did a little bit of research around this because I was back, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Freightwaves conference and I was on stage talking about diversity. So Laura Ann from Alliance and I talked a little bit about, how diversity really affects the bottom line. And then we also talked about another article that we had on Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn page about how mentorship is dwindling between women. Because they feel like it's affecting their status with their male peers, which I thought was a little bit interesting. So let's kick this off. What do you think about gender diversity, equality? How are we going to push this? I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's talking about it, and some people are doing a really good job at it, but I think there needs to be more. What do you think?
Well, that's a leading question. But I mean, I would. I mean, we just opened the discussion a bit earlier. So for sure, there's a lot more that can be done. And today I had a conversation with Suzanne, incidentally, from Novo Nordisk, and she's obviously a good case study of a woman that went all the way to become a chief supply chain officer. And she was sharing that in Novo Nordisk, what they're doing is they're working a lot, not on a quota basis, because there are some companies actually that are pushing it through a quota of how many male and how many female should you have on the board, on the C-level, on the senior management, which is one way to do it. But she was saying that in Novo Nordisk, they were very focused on unconscious bias, and which is true, because typically we will select people that are like us.
Right.
And just historically, there's more male in senior leadership position because that's just historical data and reality. And then obviously there's going to be more male. So we need to start there. The mindset is a big thing. That being aware of these patterns is a big thing. There's definitely a push. So we to the point where it can fling the other way. So I think there is, I'll just be a little bit the devil advocate, and I actually went to a conference where a woman pointed out that she struggled badly to hire somebody in her team because she had so strict agenda of diversity that she could not basically hire a male anymore. And that's also to the point where, but I mean, aren't we supposed to hire the best for the job? So I think there's a fine line. I mean, I think there's different ways in which to go around doing it. We've actually had clients tell us bluntly, and I will not name them, say, look, by 2022, we have a quota of 40% of our leaders need to be women. We need to stand on our head and make it happen. Now, is that the correct approach? I'm not sure, but because there's only that many women, right? So if all the companies all of a sudden wake up with these quotas, I mean, where are you going to pull it from? Because you're not going to be able to grow the talent within. So there's probably going to be a combination of factors. One, to the point, culture is shifting. So the fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that the media, that the articles, that there's a celebration whenever there's more women in positions of seniority is great, because it's already shifting, and it's shifted already, I think. And then onwards is also from building the talent pipeline, working on our mindset, making sure that we encourage women from within. So I'm, again, very specifically speaking about gender. That's not the only diversity quota, but let's make it very practical again, because otherwise we just get lost in, are we going to talk also about senior candidates or whatever, other races. And so let's just speak about gender, because I think it's very practical. So I think that needs to be done. Mentorship needs to be done. More role modeling needs to be done. But to be fair, storytelling, it needs to be done in a big way by companies, and more by companies. But again, is there a fit for all? Is there still going to be industries where there's probably going to be more male forever? Yeah, but there's also industries where there's more female forever. I mean, if you go to Tapestry, one of my friends worked for Tapestry, which is the luxury consumer goods company that owns Coach and a bunch of other brands. Well, you know what? 80% of the workforce is female.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess my question to you is, is it the company's responsibility, or is it also the team members inside? right? Because there's two aspects of this. One is, the company to get behind it. But I also think internally, women need to take their own type of responsibility and mentor other women in their organizations for everybody to feel comfortable. Men also need to take that role as well to really mentor other women or women in general in their organizations to just sort of see, what is it that you want in life? What can we do to make your life better here? What can we do? What's your career path? What does that look like? Where do you want to go? Just in general, having these conversations. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a male-female thing. I think women want to have more of these conversations, right? And want to be able to share this with other people in their organization, and they want to feel supported. So I think that's the difference in the genders, right?
But
sorry, go ahead.
There's also some significant things that hold women back, in that, a lot of family planning and family responsibility automatically falls onto women. So when you're trying to hire for senior positions, if you're a woman who's in your 30s and 40s, and these are kind of the years where you typically have enough experience to start being considered for management and for senior management positions, but that's also the age where either, especially in this generation where women are having children later, you've got a newborn or you've got young children at home. So where are the supports for childcare and or flexibility on being able to leave to an appointment or a school concert, and then, like this kind of concept of women having to do it all. So there are some societal restrictions that are not changing, right? Yeah. So I'm starting to see, there's a lot more kind of senior roles at the top, but then you're also getting the conversation of, but then I had to figure out how to breastfeed, how to travel while I have small children and be away from home. I had to figure out this out, figure this out. So there's still this huge gap societally, or where maybe partners aren't sort of picking up some of those at home responsibilities. And I think, it's such a different day and age where, with as much as there's all these new technologies, you still, in order to have families, like, you kind of need that two incomes. If everyone as an adult is trying to find a purpose in life, then both partners need to have purpose in life. And it's not necessarily entirely tied to the home and raising children. It's kind of a bigger, broader world purpose, right? So I think there's still some things lacking, not that necessarily companies are expected to provide these, but that can make a difference, especially if the culture, we're very lucky here at Orchard, the culture from the top is, kind of a families first. So if you had to leave for an appointment, your child is sick, no matter who it is leaving, we kind of, support that person in working without them or working with them at a different time, or working with them at the next day as much as possible. So those kinds of things, like women also pick up on when your organization is not flexible, or when, you pick up on it's not, and this is what Radu's saying, this unconscious bias. You hire people who are like you, or you set your office culture up to be what your routine is. Women pick up on that. People with different backgrounds or different needs, they pick up on that. Where so it's like, you've set up a culture where everybody leaves at 3 to go play golf, or you've set up a culture where we have breakfast meetings. How am I supposed to drop off my kid? How am I supposed to work with my partner on that? How am I, I don't play golf. So it's not just the quota that Radu is talking about, but how flexible are they in that quota that they want to have, the 40% of women leaders in their organization, but are they doing everything around it to be able to help support a woman in that role? Mm-hmm. Sending that out to you, Radu. Yeah, Radu, solve this problem for us.
Tough one to solve.
Yeah, there's so many variables.
And again, as much empathy I can show. I think I'm also limited by my gender, and then I've not actually been confronted with this problem myself. But I think what I'm saying. So one, don't get me wrong, we're far. We have far to go, and secondly, we have come a long way. I think this kind of discussions even would not have happened to the intensity and the frequency that we're having it today, even 5 years ago. So I think we've come a fair bit of distance. There are companies, there are stories out there that are intensifying as well in terms of how to treat women, especially when it comes to breastfeeding, taking care of little ones. There's Patagonia, which has a fantastic culture. I'm just giving an example that I read about in terms of taking care of mothers, and you might know the brand. They're also very good for sustainability, and they have a lot of back to storytelling, right? So if you tell the story right, if you create the culture right, I think all of this plays into that employer brand. I think the more of these stories, the more people will pick on it. I think we're heading in that direction. It's just like with anything that is rooted into mindset and into behavior, it takes a while. And this is changing culture. This is changing our behavior of a society. As a society, it takes time. But I'll give you another example, which is slightly parallel. But when the person presented me to this fact, and again, it was a podcast which I had with the largest food delivery company in India. And you may not think that it's much connection, but bear with me. So because of food delivery picking up so much in India, women in India, which again, from a society perspective, is even more than the Western world, that you have to stay home, take care of the kids, cook for the man and whatever, right? So I'm exaggerating a little bit, but definitely the stereotype was much more intense, and it still is in India, right? Now, because of these food delivery options, now women are much more empowered to, instead of cooking themselves, you order. It's not expensive. It's quite convenient, and you pretty much get much more options. So that frees up a lot of time for them to do other things, right? So does that mean that it happens overnight? Does that mean that changes, all of a sudden? Does that mean that probably some of the men in the family or whatever don't have to a little bit get shaken up? No. But there's a shift. You see where I'm coming from? There's a shift happening that will for sure go in the right direction. And again, I mean, maybe people are very comfortable. I mean, I'm sure some women are very comfortable with that role. Some women are not, right? So it's very much still on an individual basis. But as a society, I think we're going in the right direction. We still have a lot to go. Case studies, stories, and this type of examples will help. And then, leaders need to put their actions where their mouths are, and because I think nobody would say that, no, I'm doing plentiful for women, so I'll stop now. But of course, they actually need to do it in practice.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to go back to one thing that Audrey said, and I had a conversation back in February with a couple of men, actually, that were talking about paternity leave and how they don't feel comfortable talking about paternity leave, asking for paternity leave. And this is a lifestyle choice that they and their partners want to make, but unfortunately they don't feel very comfortable in doing that. And so I think that it really comes down to not just a gender thing. I think it comes down to the flexibility. It's really up to the leadership to really set the bar and set the bar about being open, right? And for the leaders of the organization to have open conversations and encourage open conversations with their teams about these different issues. And so people feel comfortable asking for that flexibility to really help. I mean, there's really no such thing as work-life balance, but really help to enable them to have the best life that they possibly can around the choices that they've made for their lives, whether that's children, whether that's men wanting to go on paternity leave, whether that's, women with small children having to travel for their work, having to pick up, drop off kids. I think it really goes, for both genders at the end of the day. And it comes to flexibility and whether people are open and honest and encouraging those open and honest conversations.
It's so funny, Sarah. I was gonna jump in and say kind of the same thing. Like we talked about this too, this paternity leave, but really it's companies kind of having a recognizing that, you know, yes, you know, you're giving it your all to a company, and just seeing that you're hiring dedicated employees who want to do that, you know, but also, yes, they have lives outside of the office. And so it's also shifting the kind of conventional capitalist business model where it's like, we're all going to work, we're all going from 9 to 5, we're all, you know, doing it this way. And just being able to have that diversity in thought or diversity in work experience where we're working on changing the world, we're working on making better products. It may not be between 9 to 5. It may not be, you know, in this strict way. And it's that flexibility and that openness to have the conversations of how do you do your best work. I value that as an employee, you're really creative and innovative and you know, committed. But it's like, how can I just, you know, little things help tweak, you know, so that as a whole, it's a more welcoming and fruitful culture for both, for all genders, or for, you know, and for all experiences. Absolutely. It is kind of a bigger picture. And I think it even for me, like as a woman, it's not necessarily that like, oh, it's me getting ahead against another gender. It's how can we just make work better and for everyone, and also being cognizant that people have families or elderly family members to take care of, or health
dogs.
issues, or puppies, or, you know.
I'm sorry. So I'm going to wrap it up there. My dogs are deciding that they want to be on camera like this one. So everybody, this is Kenzie. Say hi. Hi. And then the other one just barked. So I think they're telling me that that's a wrap. And I think that this was a really, really great conversation. Radu, thank you so much for joining us. I think we spoke a lot about things that people are really looking to hear more about in supply chain, and we were able to give some practical examples and key takeaways for them to take away from this episode. So thank you for staying up for us, and all the way from Singapore. We appreciate you joining us on the Trade Squad today. My pleasure. All right. Great, and thank you, Audrey, as well. We'll see you guys next time. Take care. Thanks, Radu.